Good evening and welcome to this special transmission of Galactic Terrors, the online reading series that scours the known universe for scary stories, strange tales, weird horror, and all sorts of literary oddities from the most imaginative authors writing in a variety of fascinating genres. I am James Chambers, and with me tonight is co-host Carol Gyzander and a very special guest co-host, Mark L. Abbott. Welcome.
Hey. I'm really excited about this.
Well, this is we're here to talk about a very special anthology. Mm-hmm. You want to tell us about it, Mark?
Oh, the Chaos Clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a mashup of steampunk and cosmic horror, and I can't say enough about it. Just a great crop of stories, different styles, different textures. In a way, I have a story in there. You guys have stories in there, and it's just a wonderful mashup of ideas and concepts, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're going to bring on in just a few minutes the editor of the Chaos Clock, Tales of Cosmic Ether, Danielle Ackley-McPhail. Mm-hmm. But before we get to that, I just want to remind people that Galactic Terrors transmits typically on the second Thursday of the month, and we will be back here on, I think it's May 8th, for our regular Galactic Terrors broadcast. And if you want to follow updates and information and our schedule, please sign up for our newsletter. We don't spam. It goes out just once or twice a month, maybe 3 times if we have a special episode like this one, just to let you know who's on and when they'll be on and where you can find us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can also click subscribe, like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, and that will, I think, automatically alert you when we have a new broadcast scheduled.
I always appreciate that because time is a strange concept, isn't it? It's a peculiar construct. Oh, wait, that's what this anthology is about. Okay, the Chaos Clock.
Yeah.
Cool. So, we usually talk about a ton of things that are coming up. Now we have 4 readings tonight instead of 3 like we usually do. So maybe we'll just mention that HWA StokerCon is coming up in June in Connecticut. Jim, you want to just throw a few interesting bones about our StokerCon coming up?
Sure. It's the annual convention of the Horror Writers Association. It's taking place in Stamford, Connecticut this year, June 12th to the 15th. We have some amazing guests of honor, including Joyce Carol Oates, Tim Wagoner, Adam Neville, Gabby Triana, Scott Edelman, and Paula Garan. And it's also where we hold the annual Bram Stoker Awards ceremony, and a tremendous amount of great horror literature programming, panels, readings, presentations, workshops, the Final Frame film competition, a special day for librarians, and all sorts of good stuff. So if you're in the area or even outside the area, come on by and hang out with some horror writers for a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
More information at stokercon.com.
Yeah, terrific. Well, what do you think? I think it'd be kind of fun to have Danielle come on and join us. She is the editor. Yeah. But let me tell you about her a little bit beforehand for those who may not be familiar for some reason with Danielle. Award-winning author, editor, and publisher of eSpec books, Danielle Ackley-McPhail has worked both sides of the publishing industry for longer than she cares to admit. Her published works include 8 novels, including her latest, The Play of Light. She's also the author of 9 solo collections, the newest being Echoes of the Divine and the Nonfiction Writer's Guide, the Literary Handyman Library. She's the senior editor of numerous anthologies, including the recently released The Chaos Clock. And to learn more about her work, visit the eSpecs website, and we'll put that link up in the chat for you. So, Danielle, would you like to join us, please?
By all means. Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Thank you for having us today.
Yeah, this is fun. We've been looking forward to this. We had a little bit of fun because we were trying to do this last month, and sometimes schedules just don't work. So
yes.
Yeah, That's cool. So I'm very glad.
Danielle, the StreamYard green app is making you look like you have no arm.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure that's the green screen. I think Danielle has a slight creative thing going on here.
Or you're sort of emerging from the bookshelf behind you. Yes, that's awesome.
Yes.
She's
yes.
probably
I don't
busy.
have a green screen.
She's probably
Oh,
busy.
wow.
She's probably busy using her arms and editing while we're talking. Yeah,
No, I'm trying to stay as still as possible so that I don't actually
that's great.
disappear like I did when I set this up.
Yeah, that happens. Oh,
Yeah.
well. No, that's very fun. But so we were. Okay. I have to say that I remember when this anthology came together. We were at Heliosphere, which is a science fiction and speculative fiction convention in the Northeast, in New Jersey, and there was some chatter going back and forth, and Danielle and Jim were talking about doing this or doing that, and I was just sort of hearing something.
You can say it. It's Jim's fault.
Okay. Okay. That's fair.
I'm just the enabler.
And so then Danielle came back and said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing? I couldn't wait to hear.
Well, there's a dangerous thing. If somebody brings me an idea and it instantly sparks a response, like the next thing out of my mouth is the title, that's it. It's going to happen and it's going to be great.
Yes. So
It
I
happened
remember.
with Badass Fairies. It happened with Gaslight and Grim. And it's happened with the Chaos Clock.
Yeah. So what was the inspiration, Jim? What brought this on?
I write a lot of cosmic horror stories, and I've been writing a lot of steampunk stories, and they just seem like a natural fit to me to do some cosmic horror in a steampunk setting. And I just kind of threw that out to Danielle at the convention, and no joke, like 90 seconds later, she came and found me across the dealer's room on the other side and said, "I've got it," told me the title, and I knew we were all doomed.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, it was actually my first foray into steampunk.
Oh.
I'd never done it before, so James kind of walked over and whispered to me, would you be interested? And of course, yeah. Not, and then I walked away like, wait a minute, what did I just agree to?
What am I doing?
And several months later, Jim can attest to this. I sent him a small novella. And I still apologize to him to this day because I was like, I didn't know what to leave in and what to take out. And I could almost hear him sigh through the email. He's like, okay, I'll take a look at this. And but it's actually become one of my favorite stories. Thanks to you guys.
Well, I very much enjoyed hearing you read it when we were live at the Brooklyn Books and Brews event that Randy Dawn, another one of our HWA New York chapter members, runs. So we got to hear your story live. We wanted to have you come in and guest host with us tonight because you already got to read once, but we have some more fun stories coming up as well. So that'll be cool. Yeah. So neat. What kind of response have you been getting, Danielle, from this anthology?
It has been overwhelmingly positive. It's just such a fun concept. I like to describe it. You have to have that one-line elevator pitch when you set an event. And for this one, it is if H.P. Lovecraft and H.G. Wells had a literary baby while watching heavy metal. And it's really the book in a nutshell. The one overwhelming theme in every single story, other than being steampunk and cosmic horror at the same time, is some clock element. And because we didn't want just repetitive over and over, it didn't have to be an actual clock. It could be the sound of a clock or just some representation of time. And the authors really had a lot of fun with that and brought it. They really did. So the clock for us is the Lochnar. And just like in heavy metal, where the Lochnar could transform and change and, do all kinds of things, That's what our clocks are doing.
Cool.
Very cool.
Tick tock, tick tock.
It was as a reader, I was just mesmerized by all of the different approaches that the contributors took to incorporating the clock idea or the idea of time into their stories. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's always a challenge because we are so limited with staff. We have to carefully manage submissions. So we don't do open submissions, which means every story really has to work. And we have to put serious effort into not overlapping too drastically so that the stories end up, feeling repetitive for the reader.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
No threat of that here.
Yeah.
Well,
that's really cool. Oh my. Well, what do you guys think? Should we listen to some stories?
By all means.
Yes.
Yeah. Mark, do you want to start us off by introducing Max? That'd be great.
Yeah, sure. All right, here we go. Max I. Gold is a Jewish-American author and poet with an extensive body of work comprising over 350 poems since 2017. His writings have earned a place alongside many literary luminaries in the speculative fiction genre. His work has appeared in numerous literary journals, magazines, and anthologies. Maxwell's work has been recognized with multiple nominations, including the Eric Hoffer Award, Pushcart Prize, and the Bram Stoker Awards. You can find him and his works at www.thewellsoftheweird.com.
All right. Welcome, Max.
And I'd like to point out that his contribution was 2 poems to the book that set it up and finish it up.
Very cool. All right. Let's bring on Max.
Hi, everyone. I will be reading, and as Danielle mentioned, there are 2 poems, and I don't know if I guess I'll read this one first. These are 2 prose poems, and the poem that starts the anthology is called "The Birth of Mechanical Things." Kind of like Mark mentioned, this was kind of also my first foray into steampunk. So I wanted to make something that was steampunk and also still had the cosmic horror into it. So without further ado, this is the birth of mechanical things. Cradled in brown, dirty, and spike-covered canyons of manufactured entropy against the hot, flaming bosoms of the industrial masters, silvery oil belched from molten stomachs. Unable to be contained in the old glass bodies whose wings shimmered in shadow and ash below old cities. There were those who spoke in muddled tongues of metallic forges packed deep under the cement bottoms of nameless cities and bemoaned the horror of the mechanical things. Worse than the fear-drunk delusions of an old world standing taller than everything, a clock like Stereopticon, whose puckish crystallizations of time haunted the ruins of the present with the ghosts of what used to be. The awful bastards of gods older than the oldest stars, 14 billion years at the beginning of existence, rose higher than the emerald skies, whose unsettling particulates discolored the world with the music of something tenebrific and wild. The weary clock face flickered in and out, unable to hold the terrible burden any longer. Stale light crashed with explosive relief throughout the putrid air. Few remained after the clock fell, deserted and empty. The cities became bleak monuments, doomed to oxidize beneath a cruel daytime star, once the forges collapsed, brought by some splendid winged death. Cold, filled with dust and regret, the sand and shadow asphyxiated any remnant possibility of sanguinity, replaced by the demented, muddled tongues cackling through broken glass and bent dreams inside the ruins of metallic forges lost under the cement bottoms of nameless cities. And that's it.
Thank you, Max. That was great. So we will, if you have any questions for Max, go ahead and put those in the chat. But I'm kind of wondering what your take on this was when the concept, when you heard the concept. I think I know you're familiar with cosmic horror. I don't know if you had dabbled much in steampunk or steampunk ideas before this. Was that piece of it new for you? Was this idea something that you had to wrap your head around?
It was, and I may have been talking to you or to Danielle. I think initially I was doing a lot of research into Lochnar and like that show initially, and that was like it was essentially like I was trying to go on this idea of like of evil, because I've never watched the show. I actually tried to watch the show on YouTube and it was very weird. But the splatterpunk concept was, or not splatterpunk, I'm sorry. Not splatterpunk.
Steampunk.
Steampunk, thank you. The steampunk concept was, I was trying to add like a mechanical aspect to it and, wrap that around with the cosmic horror aspect. And that was different for me.
Be careful what you say. Danielle will be doing the splatter steampunk anthology next to mash up those genres. So when you said you were trying to watch the show, do you mean the heavy metal movie or because the Lochnar originated with Richard Corbin in his Den comics, but they were preceded by an animated series. This has nothing to do with steampunk. I'm just curious where you found research on the Lochnar.
So I looked up Lochnar heavy metal, and then what came up was something from 1981, an animated film or an animated cartoon series from 1981. And so the Lochnar was this demonic energy being, I guess, that just wants to destroy all of everything. And so that kind of led into my research of like what I was doing, and then it had to be around a clock. So I guess that's kind of, it was mixing that idea with like the steampunk,
right.
Kind of like the rust and the images of like decaying cities and that whole thing.
Got it. Well, we have a question from Teal James Glenn. What comes first for you, images, sensations, or word shapes? That's interesting.
Sometimes I like to play around with shapes of words. It depends. Like old glass bodies. Like that was like, like old glass bodies or like fear drunk delusions. Like sometimes I'll put words together and see how they sound like rhythmically. Or sometimes it'll be images. I think for this, it was more the image of like old rusted cities or old decayed civilizations under, I don't want to say Blade Runner-esque, but just like that kind of image, I think helped shape this.
Very cool. All right. So do you think you might do any more steampunk writing in the future? I know cosmic horror is definitely in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I could definitely see myself writing something like this again. I think like now that the mechanical things kind of exist in like my mythos of like cyber gods and stuff, I could definitely play around with that more.
So does the concepts of steampunk, do they fit into your cyber gods mythos nicely? Because there's a certain mechanical aspect to that too, but it's more of a digital feel, right?
I think so. I mean, I think I know there's usually like a time frame kind of sometimes with steampunk generally, or there's some kind of there's some kind of technology difference. Right. Usually, but I think that fits. I think that could fit in nicely.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things that steampunk people have grappled with defining it, and there are multiple definitions out there, and I think mostly it boils down to a version of reality where the primary technology is steam driven, and then a lot of it often comes down to the gear. It has an aesthetic and a clockwork element, things like that. So it's sort of the analog version of the cyber gods concept.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, Max, thanks so much for joining us and for reading your poem. And we'll have you back on in a little bit to talk about what you have coming up next and where people can find you.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right. Our next reader is Will McDermott. Will turned a love of science fiction and games into a writing career. He has published 9 novels, 25 short stories, and helped create numerous worlds, characters, and stories for card, board, and video games. His fiction is often set in gaming universes, including Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, Renegade Legion Universe, and Mage Wars. Will is known for bringing larger-than-life characters alive, including Warhammer's Cal Jericho and Mad Don, Magic's Balthor the Stout, and Night Stalker's Carl Kolchak. Check out willmcdermott.com for more info. Let's welcome Will.
Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm going to read the first 2 pages of my story in the anthology called Sky Rivers of Gray. I remember clearly the day of my trip into the countryside to visit my childhood chum Sean. A crisp December breeze stung my eyes as I drove my newly completed steam carriage through freshly fallen snow that cleansed the world overnight and left a crystallized sheen on the hedgerows. It felt good to leave the dank, grimy air of London behind and enjoy the cold winter sun on my face as I weaved my steam-powered carriage through quaint villages wrapped in the cozy embrace of winter's blanket. My best mate and colleague, Harold Pierce, a fellow in the School of Engineering, had designed the steam engine and helped me build the carriage over the previous year. The final piece, machine-boilered coupling, had just arrived during break, and I had not yet had a chance to put the Iron Camel, as Pierce had named it, in honor of the hump of the mid-carriage boiler, on the road. Thus, when the Dean of Archaeology asked me to check on Professor Sean Ludlow, whom I had known since childhood, I jumped at the chance. I wanted to see how fast the Iron Camel could go with a full head of steam, and had not visited Sean's family manor since we traipsed the grounds as lads between terms. It was somewhere beyond Stevenage when I had my first inkling that something was amiss. The crisp winter breeze that had stung my eyes and filled my lungs with fresh, clean air began to turn acrid. It reminded me of the smoke-tinged skies surrounding the mills of Manchester. But the Midlands had no industry, so from where could this putrid smell emanate? That puzzle quickly resolved itself, but presented even more questions when I noticed rivers of smoke flowing through the air as I drove through the rolling countryside. The black haze radiated from a central point, like the waning rays of the sun at dusk, if its beautiful reds and oranges were instead an inky black and purple miasma. As I continued north, driving toward the nexus of the dank clouds, I wrapped my scarf about my face, not to keep the cold at bay, but to save my lungs from the tar-like substance that hung in the air. At that point, I noticed something even stranger. The very landscape had changed. The land beneath the streams of black mist had turned gray. The entire snow-covered landscape had lost its hue. No more did the green hedgerows twinkle from a shimmering snow cover. The hedges and snow remained, but both appeared of ashen gray. They were not covered in soot. It was as if the color had drained away, leaving only a dirty, drab silhouette behind. And yet, in the distance, where the sun still shone between the rivers of smog, the colors of the world remained vibrant, their bright, shining hues taunting the gray lands to either side. As the road twisted and turned through the low hills toward Sean's family manor, my steam carriage alternately passed from color to gray and back again. I was amazed to find the air fresh, clear, and full of life in the vibrant sections, but dead and ashen in the gray sections. My mood, too, changed back and forth, moving from lightness and joy to darkness and despair as my car breached the intersections between the two separate worlds. I soon realized these miasmic rivers of death emanated from the Ludlow Manor, and as I drew into the lane leading to my friend's family home, the deathly twilight became almost ever present, with mere slivers of life and light between thick, dark rays. Then I saw the manor, which, despite the peculiarities I had already witnessed, stole my breath in an instant. Large chunks of the manor had been removed, leaving huge gaps in the walls. Stray bits of stone and masonry teetered along the edges of the gaps, threatening to fall at any moment. And yet, no debris lay on the ground around the foundations. The wall sections had simply vanished. From every gap in the manor, thick black fumes belched forth, staining the edges of the walls the color of burnt charcoal. I had found the origin of the rivers of gray in the sky. I brought my steam carriage chugging to a stop and ran to the door, not daring to enter through one of the charcoal holes. I burst through into the foyer and shouted for Sean. At first, I heard no response. The air was still, fetid, and oppressive inside. I found it hard to breathe and rewrap my scarf around my nose and mouth after yelling my friend's name. Then I heard a scrabbling sound, barely more audible than a rat in a wall. The sound emanated from the parlor, which I could see from the vestibule was ashen gray throughout, despite the giant hole in the wall that should have permitted sunlight to penetrate the gloom. "Sean!" I yelled again as I moved toward the edge of the gray parlor. The scrabbling sound responded again. This time I could tell it was the rasping of a voice, too hoarse to rise above a whisper. "Is that you, David?" the weak voice called out. Having been to many a rugby match with Sean over the years, I could discern his voice, even when it sounded hoarse from screaming nonstop for 80 minutes. And yet, I tarried at the edge of the gray line just inside the parlor, both unwilling to bear the blackness of despair I knew awaited me inside, but also worried that perhaps long exposure to the dank air was what had robbed Sean of his voice. From my vantage point outside the gray parlor, I bore witness to several sights that eventually forced me to overcome the overbearing dread and fear I felt. An enormous Egyptian sarcophagus, the top of which had been pried off and lay half overturned against an overstuffed sofa, dominated the center of the parlor. Scads of darkened and shredded linen wraps seemed to have erupted from the ornate inlaid casket and lay draped across nearly every surface in the room. 5 ashen-faced bodies lay strewn around the sarcophagus as well, half wrapped in the cloth straps, their gray blood staining the dark cloth. I recognized the faces of several of the corpses, including that of my mate, Harold Pierce, the engineer. The general gray tone of their dead faces, as well as their hands and even clothes, was not the strangest sight of these dead bodies, of which I had seen enough during my time in the military. It was the expressions on their faces that gave me pause. I had seen fear and death before. I'd even seen dread and surprise, as well as calm acceptance of death's embrace. But here I saw abject horror captured on each face as their wide open eyes competed with their gaping mouths to see which could yawn the farthest open. More than that, however, each face looked like a monstrous caricature of the person I had once known, with every feature exaggerated to ridiculous proportions, as if they had frozen at the moment of death in the most gruesome expression imaginable. I was no stranger to the many faces of death, but these expressions made me wish to flee the manor and never return. I might have done so if Sean's moaning had not stayed my feet. I tore my gaze from the bodies, lingering for a mournful moment on Harold's twisted visage, which nearly ripped my heart in twain, to seek my childhood friend, whose rasping moans continued to beckon me forward. I found him draped across a wooden chair that seemed to have been carved from iron, so steely gray was its color. The chair sat before a gray desk upon which stood an elaborate metal mechanism that looked part clock, part automaton, and part puzzle box. I'd never seen its like, and pray I never will again. The clockwork mechanism stood at least 4 feet high and almost as wide and deep. The center front of the mechanism contained a face not unlike that of a clock, with 13 hands rotating in a complex pattern around no less than 5 points. 2 sets of mechanical arms extended from the sides of the mechanism, one each near the top and another set extending from the base. As the clock hands revolved around one another on the face, the arms on the side performed an intricate dance, as if trying to find purchase on some unseen object or objects in the air. Inside the device, innumerable gears, pulleys, ratchets, suspensions, bezels, pendulums, and springs all noisily clicked away in a convoluted and complex rhythm of oscillating and pulsating movements. I knew not from where this clockwork monstrosity hailed, or what connection it could possibly have to an Egyptian sarcophagus. I shall probably never learn the entire truth about the awful machine, but I will swear until my deathbed that the machine's movements did not obey the natural laws of physics. "Stop the clock!" Sean rasped, his ashen gray arm reaching toward the mechanism from where he lay atop the chair. "End the chaos." I think I'll stop there.
Ooh, come on.
There. Oh, oh wow. That was amazing.
Yeah, very
Thank
cool.
you.
Yeah, lots of fun. Lots of fun. I'm fascinated with the fact. Okay, between the two of your stories, Mark's story takes place in New York City, and Will, yours is in this manor, which is somewhere, and so it's clearly the manor that's the important part that ties in. I'm kind of interested from both of you. What do you think about the placement of your story, and how do you decide upon that? Where are you going to put this thing? Will, how did you decide this is a manor that you're going to do?
So. Mostly I was trying for that kind of that Gothic feel. While I was doing some research to get ready to write this story, because I really had never done cosmic horror, never really read cosmic horror, I asked a friend of mine, another writer, for some tips on what Lovecraft stories I should read. And one of them that he mentioned that I ended up reading was Color Out of Space. And this is very much written in that vein for a couple of reasons, and I can talk about this a little bit later as well. But that whole, it's out in the countryside, it's away from anywhere, any place modern, any place that could actually help, that kind of feeling of you're all alone out there, what are you going to do? That was, I think, probably what drove me to put it in the manor. The other thing was, the central idea is there's this group of scientists, educated people who have come together to try to research this thing that has come into their possession, and it actually discusses later in the story about, well, we couldn't do it in the school. We had to do it out here away from prying eyes because of certain reasons. And so those are kind of the reasons why I set it out there. I didn't realize going into the story that I was going to spend time on the way there. And it was as I was getting into the story that I realized, well, that's a really important part. He's got to go from his comfort, his world of comfort, to this strange alien place and see it as he's driving into it, and still have the courage to go forward and help his friend.
Yeah. And Mark, yours was in New York, so you placed it in some familiar locations, Gowanus and all that.
Yeah. I think when I sat down, the central idea that I wanted to do for mine had to centered around city corruption. So I was trying to think of what my mind went back to a time period where I knew that the city, the people were starving, where people needed. I think my reference point was the opening of Peter Jackson's King Kong. and that idea of how the city looked during the Depression and everything. And so my concept started there. And I just knew that living in Brooklyn, that tower clock that's downtown Brooklyn that has the faces all going all four. I remember growing up and everybody used to say, never set your watch to that thing because all four sides are telling the wrong time. It's so and it was true. At one point, they were like each arm was like 5 minutes off from the other one. So the two of them, the two ideas just kind of came together, and I worked with that, and I knew I wanted to do something with breaking the space-time barrier and opening up portals and dimensions and things of that nature.
Ooh. Are you trying to tell us that that was a four-sided chaos clock? I think you are. Hey, Will, we have, oops, that's the wrong one. Oh, yeah. Well, you got a lot of applause from some people, but also we have a question from Teal Glenn who says, I may know the answer to this. What called you into the thrall of the steampunk world?
Danielle.
I thought that might be the answer. Yeah.
I had never ventured into steampunk. I mean, other than watching League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and enjoying it, but I hadn't really. And one of the other, and I've seen many versions of it, but I had never read one of the other books that novels that I read to get ready for writing this was Time Machine, which I'd never read. And this brings me back to kind of the point of how I was telling this story, that both the Time Machine and Color Out of Space are stories that are told by a narrator after they happened. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting way of telling a story that I had never really tried before, where it's a first-person narrative, but it's really being told afterward, and it's being told to a group of people, but involves other people. And so I wanted to bring that into this story. And so that's why I came up with the narrator who's, the friend who's on his way there. And that's why that part became very important to me, is that it's really his story, even though the story doesn't happen to him. And it seems like a lot of the fiction from that period of time, from H.G. Wells, from H.P. Lovecraft, kind of follow that same kind of pattern. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, and I want to try my hand at that.
How do you keep the tension and the reader's engagement in a story like that? Because when the person's telling the story, we know they survived because they're there.
Yeah.
Does your gameplay help with that, or?
I think so. But yeah, I think what I was trying to do in here is, he's going to survive, but you don't know there's a mystery. And so I think the mystery and the unfolding of what happened, why did it happen, how can it be stopped, that all is there. And that kind of keeps you invested in the story, even though, you might know that because it's a first person and it's being told from a period of time later on that, yeah, he survived, but maybe his friend didn't. You don't know until you get to the end of the story whether or not his friend survived. 5 people did die, so it's very possible that others could die. It is a little open-ended at the end. I'll give that away right now. We could eventually go back to it and see what came next.
I have a quick question for you, Will. Was there any point in time when you were writing this that you became unnerved in the world that you were creating?
Yeah. There's a section, and I was gonna include it in this, but I felt like it was gonna go too long to get there, where he is pushing his way to the clock, and at one point, it starts to. It's very much a journey into darkness, a Apocalypse Now kind of moment where he's having everything stripped away from him as he's just making the 10 feet to get from the door to the clock, and at one point his it just starts this onrush of despair. And he starts lamenting of, I should have been here. I shouldn't have waited for the part for my car. I should have gotten out here sooner. All of this is all my fault. And that point gave me a little bit of a shiver as I was writing it.
Yeah, a little bit scary and creepy. Yeah. Well, I just want to share one little thing. I used to be the editor at Writer Punk Press, where we made anthologies of punk stories based upon classics. And so one of the stories I was able to do was a cyberpunk version of The Color Out of Space. So that's like my favorite Lovecraft story. So I just wanted to share that. If you like the story, that's cool.
I did. I love that story. It was just amazing and just creepy as hell.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Well, listen, thanks so much for joining us. And it's fun to hear you reading your words. I like the story, but it's even more fun to hear you read it. So that's
thank
cool.
you.
So, so please come back and join us at the end when we're all going to talk about other things we have coming up. Yeah.
Sounds great.
All right.
So what I'd love to do now is we have a recording of Jody Lynn Nye reading her story, because we had everybody's so busy. It's hard to get people all together. So I got to, meet up with her separately. We recorded her story. I asked her a few questions. So I'd like to jump into that now. That sounds fun, right? Yeah.
Hey, I'm jumping in for a moment. I am not Jody Lynn Nye, but I just need to buy a few seconds. Our queued up video of Jody seems to have vanished from our queue, and I'm going to see if I can.
Oh, okay.
Carol, you may have to do that because I think you have the source file.
Yeah, I'm going to go do that. If somebody else would like to read Jody's intro, that would be really cool.
Sure. Mark, do you want to do the honors?
Sure. Okay. Jody Lynn Nye lists her main career activity as spoiling cats. When not engaged upon this worthy occupation, she writes fantasy and science fiction, most of it in a humorous bent. Since 1987, she has published over 50 books and more than 200 short stories. She's also written with notables in the industry, including Anne McCaffrey and Robert Asprin. Jody teaches writing seminars at science fiction conventions, including the 2-day intensive workshop at DragonCon, and is coordinating judge for the Writers of the Future contest. More about Jody on her website, jodylynnye.com.
Cool.
Reading an abridged version of her story, Saving Time.
All right.
Okay, here we go.
I remember when my fate was set in motion. It was my 10th birthday, 4:58 in the afternoon of December the 10th, 1886. I was surrounded by my friends and relatives. I had just blown out the candles on my strawberry layer cake. My grandfather gave me his watch. "It's been mine since when I was a boy," he said, unfastening the chain from his waistcoat pocket. "So I don't think it's too large for you." He placed the round gold case into my palm and fastened the heavy chain through the middle of the buttonhole of my shirt. The gold gleamed against the brown of my skin like a jewel in a setting. First, I felt the cold metal touch my skin. Then a buzzing surged through my entire body. It grew until I felt like I might vibrate through the floor. Then it softened, but didn't die away completely. It felt like people were looking at me from every direction, even though I couldn't see them. He watched me with knowing eyes and nodded. "Do you feel it, Nick?" he whispered. I met his gaze, open-eyed. "What is it?" "The universe," he said, and gave me a smile. I felt the gears inside the watch turn, and I felt tiny as an ant. "It's too big for me," I protested, trying to hand it back. "It's too big for everyone," Gramps said. He took the watch from my hand and tucked it into the pocket of my brown jacket. I could still feel the ticking through the layers of cloth. Made my whole body twitch. Gramps smiled at me. But you'll do good with it. I know it. My mother brushed off the moment as though it didn't matter. Did she know? She must have. She clapped her hands. Sit down, Dad. Who wants cake? My grandfather laughed and pulled up one of the carved wooden dining room chairs to watch the fun. I always felt that he observed harder than anybody else in the world. His eyes, darker even than his skin, took in everything. The watch had to be wound about once a week. The gold stud on the side of the shining case clicked and popped out a fraction of an inch when the gears inside ran down. I always stopped whatever I was doing when it did and twisted the stem until I felt it stiffen. Uncanny things happened if I didn't. There was the time I saw a strange motor car hurtling across the sky right around twilight, a boxy vehicle with an enclosed roof and 4 thick tires. Nobody believed a 12-year-old black boy when I told them. It zipped overhead through the orange-tinged clouds, dipped slightly, and kept going out into the stars that were just peeking out in the west, just like a meteor. I thought I could see 2 white people inside with their mouths open and its screams, but it was gone as fast as it came. It was like a nightmare. 10 years passed before I forgot again, and I'll never forgive myself for that one. The watch kept banging away at my ribs, even though the timepiece itself was in the waistcoat on the sideline of the Harvard University tennis court. I ignored it because I was in the middle of a match versus a formidable opponent, a compactly built white man with slick black blonde hair who ran like a greyhound. He had a backward spin that sent the ball on an arc that would veer off right before it hit my racket. For once, I had him on the run, chasing after lobs that I put into the corners of the court. He had always been scornful of anyone not from his fancy school or his side of town. I was determined to show him that we were just as good as him, even though I was one of the working classes and sponsored to the school by my church. When I finally finished with the set, I lost, in case you wanted to know. I saw a young woman standing on the side of the court from the bursar's office. She waved a handful of papers at me. Her sympathetic expression got me worried. I hurried to take the slips from her and read them. It was bad news. I had received a dozen calls from my mother. My grandfather had had a heart attack. He had been calling for me from his hospital bed. His condition was worsening steadily. The last one was the hardest for me to read, which I did through tears. He hadn't made it. The watch had been trying to tell me, and I ignored it. My heart felt as if it fell right out of my body, leaving me hollow. I was devastated. He had been my friend and guide all my life, teaching me, listening to me when no one else did, and watching me as if he knew something about me that I didn't. And the watch had stopped because I neglected it. Turn it back, a voice murmured in my ear. It sounded like Gramps. Turn it back, son, now! The stud on the side of the watch popped out, and I felt that stinging sensation like an electrical shock. He wanted me to wind it. Obediently, I went to turn the tiny dial. But it would not move forward, only backward. Curious, I twisted it. All around me, people started running backward, like one of Edison's motion pictures shown in reverse. I saw myself running backward out of the college gymnasium with my 5 teammates. We looked dapper in white flannels, our hair freshly cut and brilliantined, like the champions we knew we were. I was seeing the past. I wanted to shout at myself not to fall into the trap the white player set. My mouth wouldn't open. One by one, the messages in my hands disappeared. The young woman came running to courtside. I went to meet her. Watch's stud popped in against the edge of the case. The young woman handed me a single slip of paper. It's your mother, Nick, the girl said, her big brown eyes wide with sympathy. I read the note. Your grandfather has had a bad heart attack. He is at Bellevue Hospital. He wants to see you. Please hurry. It was signed by my mother. I crushed the white page in my fist. You should go, the young woman said. But I started to say that I had a match. Then I gave myself a hard kick. I couldn't miss the chance to talk to him just one last time. I never felt so helpless in my life, but I turned to leave the gymnasium, turning away from my friends. Tom, our leader, grabbed my arm and gave me a weird look. Where are you going? The match is going to start in 5 minutes. My grandfather, I said. I held up the message as if that explained everything. He had a heart attack. I gotta go. Tom let loose of my arm. Sympathy, my friend. He looked at the others. We'll get it done. I hesitated for a moment, then decided it couldn't do any harm. Don't fall for Stephen's feints. He'll send those spinners in and you'll miss the return volleys. He's not much of a runner. He gets out of breath easy. You can beat him. What? He can't run. But he's beaten us every match this season. Trust me, I said, knowing how strange it sounded. I had a dream. They scoffed at me, but I was already running out the door.
Oh, Jody, thank you. I am so delighted to hear you read this story, this excerpted version of your story in your own voice. This is terrific. Now, can you tell us a little bit about what you write and how did you get into steampunk?
Most of my writing tends to have a funny, most of my work tends to have a funny cast because I have always wanted to be the antidote for the evening news, and finding something to cheer you up, to sit back with and relax has been an aim of mine. I always looked for that kind of book, the comfort book, the one that you reached for on the shelf when you needed that. And I have a variety of different styles that I write in, a lot of different genres. I do a little bit of steampunk, mostly short stories. It's a lot of fun to experiment with because one of my favorite TV programs in my youth was The Wild Wild West, and seeing them come up with ways to explain how scientific marvels of the modern age could be accomplished without the technology that we have now. And I find that to be a lot of fun as a storyteller. So when I had the opportunity to write something for the Chaos Clock, I decided to go back to gears and moving parts, actual clock. I know that there's such a variety of stories in this anthology, and everybody approached time in a different way. And I can't wait to read all the rest of them.
Yay for gears and moving parts. I'm a big gearhead myself. Can you tell us what you have out recently or what you have coming up? I'm sure readers would love to find more stories from you.
Oh. Well, I just had a book come out a couple of months ago for the 1632 series by Eric Flint. It's called 1635, The Weaver's Code. And there's a little bit of that kind of reverse engineering of technology in that. In fact, the whole series has reverse engineering for the kind of technology that the people of Grantville, West Virginia, had to leave behind when their town was swept up back into the 17th century. So trying to come up with analogs for the things that we take for granted now has been a lot of fun. And right now I'm working on the next of the Myth Adventure series that was started by Robert Asprin and continued by the both of us, and since his passing has been carried on by me. So that's a lot of what I've got going on right now.
Jody, thank you so much for sharing your time and your talent with us. We very much appreciate it, and I love your story in The Chaos Clock.
Anyway, good luck. Thank you. Bye.
So I believe he is our final storyteller of the evening. Bernie Mojzes. Much to his embarrassment, Bernie Mojzes has outlived Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, Janis Joplin, and the Red Baron, without even once having been shot down over Moreland Court Ridge. Having failed to achieve a glorious martyrdom, he has instead turned his hand to the written word, in the pathetic hope that he shall here find the notoriety that has thus far proven elusive. Should pity or perhaps perverse curiosity move you to seek him out, he can be found at www.kapamaki.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Bernie Mojzes.
Bernie, we're not seeing your camera right now.
That is interesting.
Yeah, if you look down at the bottom, there might be a setting for it. It might say something like mute or camera.
It shouldn't.
Jim, any thoughts? It was working just a minute ago.
It was. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Interesting.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just coming down. I'm trying some, twirling some dials and flipping some levers behind the screen here.
Turn up the steam.
I can see you in the behind the scenes, but not on the screen. I wonder if your camera has frozen, perhaps.
It's entirely possible.
Perhaps if we take him out of the stream and bring him back in, Jim, that might help.
Okay, let's give it
The
one
old
more
turn it
time.
off and turn it on again thing. Yeah.
I think, Bernie, you might have to do it on your end.
All right. Do you want me to leave and then come back?
Yeah. Do you have the correct link handy
Yes.
to come back?
Yes.
Okay, let's try that. Go
Okay.
ahead.
We'll see you again in a minute. Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Right.
listen,
Oh, sorry, Carol.
I had so much fun talking until I wasn't. No.
Bernie went out just as I clicked, and your
Yes.
file
Yes.
slid in. This is the
Jason.
technical difficulties episode of Galactic Terrors. So thanks
Right?
you all for bearing with us.
Oh, here he is.
All right, let's see if we can get that going this time. Yay!
Yay!
Yay! Oh, I can't wait to hear your words now. Now that we see you.
Right.
Okay.
All right. We're going to drop out, and everyone, thank you for your patience. Bernie, we're going to hand it over to you.
All right. Thanks. All right. Reimagining the mechanism, an exposition on the nature of time. In the face of the myriad epistemological difficulties surrounding any investigation of the so-called chaos clock, it might be tempting to consign its existence to the realm of myth, fiction, fantasy, and fabrication. How, in fact, could one hope to detect the alleged influence of such an object, a device purported to possess effects so pernicious as to affect the very flow of time itself? Should this lecture simply enumerate and describe that which is objectively known about the chaos clock, I fear I should have had to stop before I began. In contrast, the acts and attributes spuriously ascribed to this elusive object have grown at a rate so prolific that any attempt to inventory them would be rendered obsolete before the next speaker rises to stand at this podium. No, we cannot address the question of the chaos clock directly. We must instead speak around the object of our interest in hopes that we may catch a glimpse of it from the corner of our eye, so to speak, or our mind. The science of timekeeping has seen a great many advances since Christian Huygens introduced the pendulum as a measure to affix to time once and for all the nature of discrete uniform units, and in the process profoundly reordering the entirety of human existence. Under the dictates of industry, science, and capital, or capital, as our dear friend Herr Marx would say, time has been transformed from a qualitative element to a quantitative one, discrete, precise, uniform, measurable, exact, inexorable, and absolute. The concept of time as the medium through which we experience our lives has been supplanted with the concept of time as a unit of measurement. Where once we looked to the heavens to understand our position in the world and the tasks needed to survive within it, we now look to clocks. Mr. Harrison's marine chronometer has enabled global shipping and transport on a vast scale, whilst the aforementioned Herr Marx correctly notes the decoupling of time and history and the wholesale subordination of society to the rigors of the factory floor time clock. Needless to say, any processes that modify, modulate, lengthen, shorten, omit, or insert, loop, or otherwise interfere with the natural flow of time would be undetectable from within the structure of time itself, which is to say, the universe. Likewise, the very machines tasked with the meticulous keeping of time, yes, like your pocket watch, Mr. Danville, please put it away. This lecture is unlikely to be shortened by your incessant consultation of said device. These very machines are singularly incapable of detecting any variation in the flow of time. Paradoxically, the objective view of the time clock is by its nature subject to the effects of the chaos clock and is thus subjective. Logically, then, it is only by resorting to purely subjective means that we might triangulate upon an objective view. What do I mean by this? Surely, any child who has endured Sunday services can tell you, time is not linear. The incoherent droning of the pastor is interminable. Sunday will never end. Of course, it eventually does, which demonstrates the power of human imagination to create its own chronometological gravity. One must endeavor, in this case, to undertake a phenomenological investigation of I can't speak French, l'artefact qui nous intéresse, the article of interest, to observe and analyze the subjective experience, that which cannot be objectively scrutinized. How, though? How does one experience something that is fundamentally unexperienceable? Here is where I must beg your indulgence as I depart from the traditional format of the scientific lecture and expand upon my own unquantifiable experiences. Rather than seek the chaos clock itself, I would experience the world from the perspective of that obscure object. What I needed to do was experience all times simultaneously. A hopeless task, you have surely already told yourself, even as the words left my lips. But not so. There are precisely two places upon this earth where one might make a claim to all times, or to be outside time itself, at least in some limited sense. The choice of North or South Pole is no choice at all. After Captain James Cook's sighting of an ancient city sleeping, perchance to dream, in the depths of the South Pacific, what choice could there be? For what is dream but to be free of the strictures of time? Can it be a coincidence that the ancient city of Relay lies so close to one of the poles? The challenge remained, of course, as to how to reach the South Pole itself, a feat no man has hitherto accomplished. Men no less accomplished than James Clark Ross and Dumont d'Urville have failed in their efforts, and an overland expedition will not succeed until 1911, some 2 decades hence. It is incontrovertible that the body you see before you is hardly a fit specimen to be chosen to accompany. And of course, this is the effect of the time clock, of the chaos clock. Where was I? It's incontrovertible that the body you see before you is hardly a fit specimen to be chosen to accomplish such arduous ventures. In the intervening 20 years would undoubtedly do little to improve my physique. Should I wish to conquer the southernmost frontier, I would need to find an alternate means of travel. No, I had no intention of trudging across the ice pack to a nearly certain death. Indeed, a more comfortable means of transport was available to a man of sufficient imagination and sufficient means. I found my salvation in the genius of the late Dr. Solomon Andrews and the generous access to his notes and records afforded by his daughter, Harriet Cornelia Hilton, and of course in my beloved Annabelle's family estate, which paid for the research necessary to expand upon Dr. Andrews' inventions and to transport the resulting airship to the edge of the Antarctic ice pack. My darling wife raised no objections regarding my purchase of the assets of Andrews' bankrupt aerial navigation company, deeming it a harmless pastime that would distract me from what Annabelle contemptuously called my l'obsession petite. Little did she know that my interests in uncovering the undiscoverable truths of the chaos clock were hardly petite, both preceding and exceeding my interest in her, and that my every move was made in service of said obsession. Utilizing fluctuations in buoyancy to generate forward momentum, Mr. Andrews' Aeron was an ingenious invention for its time, but it would not suffice for the journey I envisioned. However, the value of powerless propulsion was undeniable for a trip of indeterminate duration. Used in combination with steam-powered propellers, it would increase our speed, extend our range, and reduce the weight of our coal stores. Annabelle believed that my aerial ventures to be of a practical, by which she meant commercial, nature, though likely misguided. and was delighted to humor her eccentric husband. Several iterations demonstrated the promise of the technology, but the Aeron 5 was to be the airship finally worthy of reaching the South Pole. Nearly 5 times the length of Mr. Andrews' original flying machine, its 5 hydrogen-filled balloons supported an enclosed gondola capable of carrying a crew of 5 and a score of passengers from London to Paris in half a day. Perhaps a viable business might have been made of it had I the inclination. Most infuriating woman, my Annabelle. Stunningly brilliant, she had a head for both science and letters and a business acumen sufficient to maintain her family's fortune despite my excesses. However, while her hunger for knowledge took her to any lecture hall willing to seat a woman, whatever the subject, she had no patience for the most important question of the age. No, when the woman discovered that I had used the money she had provided to build berthing towers across Europe to instead purchase and refit the Patria, a whaling vessel originally of Belgium, capable of withstanding the harsh southern seas and large enough to carry the disassembled airship in her hold, both her suspicions and her ire were aroused. Once those unpleasantries were agreeably resolved, we departed Antwerp in March of 1890 with the intention of reaching the Antarctic Circle in the dead of winter, which even the dimmest among you understand in the Southern Hemisphere is the height of the summer months. Due to circumstances beyond my control, we did not arrive until March the following year. I shall not bore you with the tedium that is life upon a seaborne vessel. There are hardly enough books to consume a month, much less a year, and no useful improvements could be made to the airship at this point. Even Annabelle had ceased to provide amusement. She had grown sullen and uncommunicative, locked in her cabin, while the ship's crew paradoxically considered her very presence aboard ship unlikely, yet made every attempt to put themselves in her company. I was obliged to shoot Mr. Henry, the boatswain, who thought to avail himself of her attentions after prying open her cabin door. Idiot. She might have escaped. How then could I have proved to her the reality of the chaos clock? And I think I'll stop there. Stopped in both speech and in face.
Yes, thank you so much, Bernie. You are frozen in
Yeah, I'm going to try to modify that.
Okay, but we could hear you perfectly well, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us. If you want to try a quick jump out and back in, that's okay. We can.
I can just be on voice. Is fine.
Okay.
So as to not interrupt things.
Yeah, we did get some great comments from the audience about our technical difficulties. The camera is haunted. Irony equals technical difficulties during Chaos Clock show. It is a chaos clock. So, but we do have a question about your story. We can start off with that. This is from Jim Ryan. What made you decide on a monologue format? It works very well here.
I don't know. I was trying to, I always try to think of approaches that I don't expect other people to be using, and come in on any theme from a sort of tangential aspect, So I envisioned this as a lecture in front of a bunch of students that are gradually revealed to be from a number of different time periods and confused about how they got there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with Jim that the monologue format worked really well here, because one of my favorite aspects of your story is just how gradual the descent from a rather ordinary situation to extraordinary circumstances takes place. it's just little bits and bits and bits that are revealed that add up to what's really happening, and we learn that the main narrator's version of events may be somewhat subjective.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the slow build.
So, have you written steampunk stories before this one?
I have, mostly for Danny.
Guilty.
What else have I written for you?
The Goose Girl one. Out of
Yeah,
the
the
horse's
Goose
mouth.
Girl one,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Wild West one.
Did you do Afterpunk?
Yeah,
Don't remember what you wrote for that though.
yeah, that was the Wild West one.
Okay.
Very
Bernie's one of my go-tos.
Yeah, so
cool. Excellent.
I know no matter what the topic is, he's going to give me something original and unexpected.
I think this story definitely hit that mark. So,
and hopefully they're publishable too.
I think there's only one story of yours that I just could not even read because you're always trying something new. It was the one written in, what was it, 16th century chambermaid? Do you remember that one?
It was, yeah, I remember that one. It was 18th century? Yeah,
Okay.
1700s.
Dialect. Whole thing.
1700 Scots-Irish settler. So from the Pennsylvania area, but I researched a bunch of diaries and such from that time period and tried to emulate the writing style of the people at the time. Probably not to great effect.
do you often do a lot of research for a short story?
Yes. For example, on this one, the Aeron is an actual thing. It's a propulsionless airship that is directable, and it's got forward propulsion, but it doesn't have artificial propulsion. It uses a means of pulling on strings or pulling on the ropes in the front and in the back of the airship to create a wave of hydrogen back and forth, forward and backward, in order to create a propulsion, kind of like somebody who's kind of like a dolphin swimming or something like that, but through the air.
Wow.
And so that was a real thing. It was invented in the 1860s, and the person who invented it took it to Abraham Lincoln, said, "Hey, here's a thing you could use in the war." And they're like, "What?" And it didn't happen. But yeah, that was a thing. The ship, the Patria, was actually one of the ships that got used to get to the South Pole eventually. It was renamed, but yeah, it was one of the actual ships. So I do a lot of research, and the research kind of helps inform the direction of the story a lot of times.
I always love it when something like the Aeron turns out to be based on a real thing.
Yep.
Sometimes it gets us in trouble though. I've been called out in reviews for using something that's legitimate. I get called out for making stuff up when I don't need to.
even though it was real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truth is stranger than fiction. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
people would rather be skeptical, even of their fiction. But it's interesting. You were talking about Bernie as one of your go-to authors for anthologies, and we didn't really talk yet too much about the fact that the Chaos Clock is really the latest steampunk anthology that Eastbeck has published and that you have edited.
Yeah.
How many have you done so far? What number was this?
Specifically steampunk or in general?
Let's stick to steampunk. In general,
I have to do some maths there.
Yeah.
They've got machines for that now.
But I have my shoes off and everything. We started out with Gaslight and Grim.
Yeah.
Then we did Afterpunk. The Weird Wild West. Grim Machinations, Chaos Clock. I think we're up to like 5 or 6 at this point.
There's at least one more in there.
Steampunk anthologies.
Okay.
Other Aether.
Other Aether. That's it. And
we did. I'm leaving out all of the Forgotten Lore ones.
I was just going to say, do you count A Cast of Crows? And
Yeah. We actually partner with the Telltale Steampunk Festival in Maryland. They do a literary scavenger hunt, and each year they have a literary theme. The first year was Edgar Allan Poe, then the second year was Arthur Conan Doyle, and then this year it was Bram Stoker and Mary Shelley.
Yeah.
And so we create a steampunk anthology for that they use as the basis for their literary scavenger hunt. So actually we're at like 10 or something now. It all blends.
Well, I don't know that I would have ever started down the steampunk path if you hadn't asked me to. I'm wondering, Bernie, if that's the case for you, or did you write steampunk before Danielle enlisted you?
Oh, I enlisted him long before steampunk was really a thing.
So I've written a whole bunch. I mean, I wrote a bunch of stuff. So Danny was the first person who published me. And I wrote a bunch of things that, aren't really publishable. Before that, some of which would count as steampunk. I've learned a lot since, first becoming published. But I've been a fan of cyberpunk and steampunk since William Gibson. And the Difference engine. Yeah.
Very cool. That's great. Well, why don't we bring the rest of the airship crew here back on, and we can have some more conversation and hear what people have coming up that we should be on the lookout for. All right. I think that's everybody. Okay, I don't want to bring Jody back. She's just a recording. So
although we could never read the story again, that would be great. Yeah. By the way, may I just add on Jody? She was very cool because she took her longer story with lots of really cool steampunk imagery and other cosmic horror imagery, and she condensed it and abbreviated it for us. So it's an abridged version of the story. But when I asked the question, I said it was I used the wrong word. So you know how you look at them later and say, yeah. But if anybody's interested in her story to see more richness and more layers, you've got to go see it in the book.
Yes.
Just like hearing the end of all these stories and Max's second poem. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for sharing your work with us tonight, for giving us some great readings and chatting with us and taking some questions from the audience. Aside from the Chaos Clock, which everybody checking out this broadcast should definitely pick up and read for cover to cover, high quality cosmic horror steampunk entertainment. Where can people look for you, and what do you have on the horizon that they should be watching for? Max, we'll start with you since you are our first reader.
Yeah, you can find me on my website, on social media. I don't post there on my website as much as I should, but you can find me on thewellsoftheweird.com, Instagram, Blue Sky, all that. My handle is at CyberGodWrites on all handles. In regards to what I have coming up, I have 2 poetry collections coming out in 2026. One is called Neurotica. The other one is called I Was the Teenage Anti-Fascist. So those are coming out in 2026. I'm actually getting ready to. I'm also getting ready to shop my first novel, hopefully soon. So more news on that.
Awesome. Will, how about you?
I've got 2 more short stories coming out in anthologies. One actually comes out next Tuesday, and there's a presentation with all the authors next Tuesday evening. So I'll be doing this again. And that one is the Castle of Horror Volume 12. And each one of those is a different theme. This one is ripped from the headlines. And my story is called Caretakers. And it tells the true story of what happened to the cat that got lost in Yellowstone last year and made its way back to Rosewood, California, 800 miles.
Wow.
And there's a horror element to that story that I'll let you guys find out about. And then later this year, I've got a story called Fission Point in the Heritage Shifting Time Shifts anthology, which is going to be a stories about female protagonists, powerful heroines in alternate history. And mine is about Queen Amani Reines, the African queen who stood up to the Roman Empire back in 40 BC and actually beat them back. Except in my version, she's helped a little bit by another group of Africans who, during the Ice Age, discovered a nuclear power plant, a naturally occurring nuclear power plant, which is a real thing that they have discovered in Western Africa. It's no longer producing any energy, but it did millions of years ago.
Wow.
More real life facts that are just too weird. Can you believe it's crazy?
Well, I realized while Max was talking that I have not gotten either of those onto my website, but I will do that tomorrow, so you'll be able to find where they're at.
And when you say the true story of the cat, do you have the inside scoop, or is this your?
Oh yeah, it's definitely it's the true story.
Okay.
It turns out the cat is part of an ancient order of caretakers. That's the name of the story. Who are looking out for humans and fending off supernatural beasts.
Oh,
As they do, yes.
As they do.
That's what they do.
Thank you for good stuff to look out for. Bernie, how about you?
Oh, and Bernie's.
I'm just too disorganized to actually know what's coming up.
Today's Monday. I figured it out. Today's Monday.
Today's Monday, and I managed to not get pulled into any troubleshooting events like while this was going on, so that's a win. But I have a bunch of stuff that's sort of in the works, but nothing that has any firm timetables at this point.
Cool.
All right. Well, we'll certainly be keeping our eyes open and checking the website kapamaka.com. Kapamaki. No.
Kapamaki. It's cucumber roll if you eat sushi.
Kapamaki.
Cucumber roll. Of course it is. Yeah.
Danielle, the harbinger of the chaos clock.
Well, I actually have a few things going on right now, but I can't talk about them yet because they haven't been finalized. We are working on the next Forgotten Lore volume for the Telltale Steampunk. They also haven't announced their theme yet, so I can't tell you about that. But it's really cool. We're going to have a lot of fun with this one.
One thing I thought was neat about the last one was that you were able to get a forward by Dacre Stoker
Yes.
in honor of Bram Stoker. It was very cool. People can find lots of other books though on the especbooks.com website, correct? Yes.
Most definitely.
Steampunk, fantasy, science fiction, horror.
Everything under the sun.
Mark, how about you? What have you got coming up?
I've got a few irons in the fire. Really, I've been concentrating on my novel that launched in December, Sinister Ascension. So I've been pushing that a lot these days. But I've got a couple of short stories that I'm working on, and a really cool concept about that involves Jack the Ripper, Sweeney Todd, and a bunch of other penny dreadfuls that are in search of him.
Very neat.
Very cool.
Great. Carol, how about you?
I have a couple stories in anthologies that aren't ready to be talked about yet, but I am doing something exciting for anybody in the New York City area on Wednesday, May 14th. I'm going to be reading at KGB Bar for the Fantastic Fiction reading series, which is, I love going to these, and it's going to be fun to read there as well. And a little bit earlier, May 3rd and 4th, I'm doing a book sale at the Brook Hollow Winery in Columbia, New Jersey. It's called A Day of Wine, Romance, and More. I think I'm the more. So, yeah. Makes sense to me. Yeah. But what about you, Jim? What do you have coming up?
Like Danielle, I have a few irons in the fire that are not really at the point of being shared publicly, but I will be at CradleCon at the Cradle of Aviation Museum on Long Island on May 17th and 18th. Just a guest there. And after that, I'll be at StokerCon in June. And one thing Danielle forgot to mention that she has coming out from eSpec Book, the StokerCon 2025 Souvenir Anthology. Is almost about ready to go to press, and has been is quite a spectacular book with lots of great contributions. And I'm being a little mean because if you aren't attending StokerCon in some fashion, that's really the only way to get it. So hopefully we'll see a lot of people at StokerCon.
Incentive, yeah. I will definitely be there. And a lot of our folks will be there. Yeah.
It'll be my first.
Well, there's something else kind of significant about today, Jim. You know?
Yes.
Yeah. Shall we?
Absolutely. Let's acknowledge the most important thing today.
Dun, 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 dun. There may be singing involved. There could be clapping. Happy birthday, Danielle! Yay!
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is where we go. Are you one? Are you two? See, I have the numbers all laid out here for you.
We don't have that much time left.
No, it'll never stop. Oh, he's in trouble.
I am.
Oh, yeah.
I'll see you in June, sir.
June, but that's the real chaos clock, right? Is the ever ticking birthday celebration.
Yes.
But congratulations and happy birthday.
Congratulations. Happy birthday. We're all sending big hugs. We're sending big hugs. Yay.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. And thank you for spending your birthday with us, because this is very cool.
This has been wonderful.
We appreciate it.
And one more thing to share also, please mark your calendar for our next Galactic Terrors reading. It's the second Thursday in May. And we have wonderful 3 HWA New York authors coming to read: Chris Ryan, Randy Dawn, and Paula Kappa. And they're all very different stories. So I'm really excited to hear these. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
Please come and join us. So
And a reminder to sign up for our newsletter. I think Carol put the link in the chat so that you get reminders of who's coming on, when they're coming on, and what sort of horrible shenanigans we're going to be offering on future transmissions of Galactic Terrors.
shenanigans. Yeah.
We like shenanigans.
Yeah. And there's one other really fun thing. We've been talking about this anthology, but the Chaos Clock, it's got stories by James Chambers, Jody Lynn Nye, Mark L. Abbott, Rachel A. Brune, Teal James Glenn, Jeffrey Lyman, Bernie Mojzes. I always say it wrong, Bernie. I'm sorry.
Mojzes.
Thank you. My name is Carol Gyzander. You'd think I would get somebody's name right, by myself, Carol, F.R. Michaels, Danielle Ackley-McPhail, Maxwell Gold, Hildy Silverman, and Will McDermott. So some really fun authors who are familiar to me, and I hope will be familiar to more folks if you don't know them already after you pick up this wonderful anthology.
Here's what to look for. Well, thank you all so much. What was that, Will?
I love that cover so very much.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yes. I think Danielle, you hit that one out of the park. So great work on that cover.
Thank you very much.
And thank you all for coming out with us tonight to talk about the Chaos Clock and steampunk cosmic horror stories. And I think Max, we might be okay. Danielle hasn't come up with a title since you suggested splatter steampunk, so I think we're safe from having to write splatter steampunk stories.
We're all going to get an email in the morning, I know.
Grease flying everywhere.
Yes.
Exactly. But yeah, thank you so much, and to everyone who joined us in the audience tonight, thank you for coming out. If this is your first venture with Galactic Terrors, we hope you'll come back for future transmissions or check out our past broadcasts on our YouTube channel. And everyone who came out tonight, we really appreciate it and hope to see you again.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.